Hey everyone, my name's Marty. I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way. If you've got a Bible, 1 Corinthians 13, do you want to open it up or turn to that passage? We're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the whole chapter first together. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 from verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, and I give my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonour others, it is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what's in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now, we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope and love. And the greatest of these is love. You heard that passage before? If you've been to a wedding, you probably have. I gave my life to Jesus at the end of high school, about 17, 18 years old, and then had the privilege of doing a lot of mission work, camp work. And one of my favourite things to do was to take young people on camps where they would do things, challenges they'd never done before, like abseiling, like rock climbing, you know. And in the old days, we'd just go out the bush and some bloke knew something about ropes and it's a bit how you're going. Nowadays, most of the time, we would have like an organisation who know what they're doing, like Tim Longley, and they would, but they always had the talk before you go over the cliff, right? And the talk, you know, the guy would be pretty motivated, like, look, all of our people, we have hundreds of kids go over the cliffs every day. We've never lost a man, woman and child. No one is going to die falling on the rocks today, all right? And everyone's going, yeah, we know. But he'd be undeterred. He'd say, and there's this rope. It can hold 2.5 tons. You could all hop in that Corolla and it will not snap. No one's going to die today because of faulty equipment. Everyone's like, yeah, we know. Then about half an hour later, when they're actually hooked up with carabiners and starting to lean over the cliff, everything changes. And probably the funniest thing, usually, it's the blokes go, oh, stop, what's going on? It's like, didn't you listen? It usually wasn't the girls, because most of the time, these instructors are cute guys with big biceps like the guys at Wedderburn, and they'll say, oh, just lean out, and they go, oh yeah, whatever you say. That was usually, they were way more gutsy than the fellas. It's so funny. But anyway, and you'd ask the bloke, like, is the rope busting? No. Is the carabiner all right? Yeah. Is your instructor got it together? Yeah. So what's wrong? Half an hour ago you were fine, but now, when it comes to it, your actions are betraying what you said you believe. It's a little bit like values. And probably this value, more than any other value, we're all going to go, yeah, we know. The value... I thought I had a microphone back here. Did I leave it up there, mate? Could I get you to grab me a portable mic? Sorry, mate. Yeah, that'd be helpful. I'm just going to write our value up here. Thanks, mate. Sorry about that. But yeah, nothing without love. Yeah. Every church is going to talk about love, right? Well, more reason for us to stop and pray. So can you pray with me as we stop and reflect on this one? Father God, thank you for being with us, and thank you that you're real. We recognise no one can fabricate knowing you and being changed by you. But we ask you to give us all the capacity to see what you want us to see, hear what you want us to hear. Thank you for speaking to us tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. Yeah, every church is going to talk about love. But I don't know if you noticed the last sentence here in this letter. So it's a famous one. It says, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I don't know if you noticed, those three terms, they show up all over the scriptures, like hundreds of times. I'll just draw a little diagram for tonight that might help us. Okay, nothing's working tonight. Let's try another one. Okay, nothing's working tonight. That is a shape. There we go. We'll try another one. We'll go blue. Okay. Faith. And hope. And now, I don't know if you've ever thought about it. Even if you haven't read the Bible, you've probably heard about faith, hope, and love. And these three remain, and love's the greatest. You've probably heard that somewhere, even if you don't know why it works that way. But in the New Testament, there's about a dozen places where these three turn up together, though. You know, and there's different places where it says this creates that, that produces this. There's a synergy between them. The beginning of Thessalonians, the same guy who wrote this letter, he says, we remember before our God and Father your work produced by faith, your labour prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope. And so there's a sense that he says there that these three things produce good stuff in their life. Like a work of faith, a labour of love, and a steadfastness. Later in the same letter, he says they do something else. In chapter 5, he says, and so we put on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet. So he describes them then as armour. So these three things don't just produce things in your life that affect how you relate to others, they also have a protective function. And there's many more. But I want you just to consider the significance of this. Maybe some of the realities of faith, hope, and love can be worth reflecting on here with a pen that works. We borrow from the past to consider, to have a foundation of faith. We borrow from the future when it comes to hope. For the sake of the greatest of these, to be able to love in the present. Because of my throat, mate, I'm just wondering if this mic, is it running out of batteries? Or is it? No. Is it possible to give you more volume? Just because it's just my throat. I apologise for asking that. But, you know, can I get you guys to give me some examples of where there's something in the path that is a foundation for your faith? Just yell out an example. Anything in the past that you would borrow from for the sake of being something solid you put your faith on or in? What? A resurrection of anyone in particular? Okay. Nice one. That's a big one. Jesus' resurrection. It's definitely something that can ground your faith. Anything else? Running a blank. I can't hear. Hearing the gospel for the first time, which is code word for Jesus came, lived a sinless, perfect life, died in our place, and rose again. So that can be a foundation for your faith. And just so we borrow from the future when it comes to our hope, like that God is going to renew all things one day for the sake of this, love. I want to try and convince you that there's 4 reasons why Paul says here, well, there's more than 4, but I want to show you 4 of why love is greater than faith and hope. And the first one is that it precedes faith and hope. Love precedes faith and hope. That's one of the reasons why it's the greatest. Paul says in many places, those who know God are born of God, they love. But those who don't love don't know God, because God is... Oh, you're pretty out of it tonight. I'll read the verse, see if you can finish it for me. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. And anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is... Right, you got it. So his reason for saying you should love is it comes from the essential nature of God, right? It doesn't say God's essential nature is hope or faith, but it says that love is in his essential nature. So that means love has always been, because God has always been. Make sense? So it's always been. And one of the reasons it's always been is because God is a being that's been revealed in history and the scriptures as Father, Son, and Spirit in loving, perfect unity. You and I go, we can't actually and comprehend that. But let me just say very quickly, side note, you and I can't even comprehend the complexity of you, your world, let alone the being that created it, right? So let's recognize we have some humility. I'm just using the best language we have in history and the scriptures, that the Christian understanding of God is his Father, Son, and Spirit in perfect unity. That means love is a reality within the being of God. If God was a singular monad or like a unitary deity, love wouldn't be existent within him. He'd have to create another person for that, right? So maybe power might be his foundational essence, but love is the foundation, is in the essence of God, and it's his organizing principle of the whole universe. And so when he created, it came the overflow of his love. So love precedes. And so this could be a great example of what the scripture calls shalom. Everything in right relationship. Adam and Eve in the garden, they would come with open hands, trusting in faith for the things God has for them, and have a confident assurance of the things that he's going to give them. So they would have faith and hope and love. They would experience that. They were naked without shame. They had love with God. The one thing we've got to recognize, the scriptures make very clear, and life shows us, is that shalom has been shattered. Okay. It has been shattered. There we go. I'm glad I stepped about 4 meters away. Okay, you guys win for the most shattering throws. Better than Dave Clisnell and Justin's wimpy throw. Mate, that was pretty impressive. There's something serious about this. Because it's so important to recognise there's a real mess on our hands. Does that make sense? We're in church and sometimes everything's just churchy and too clean, but it's not. This shalom has been messed up. It's been shattered. We have chosen something apart from the love of God to be our main thing. Our first parents, Adam and Eve, did. You and I, all of us have chosen something. Some sort of recognition, relationship, notoriety, position, whatever. It was going to be our thing. We've placed, in other words, our faith and our hope in stuff that's not worthy of it. That means there's been a shattering. And I want you to know something else. It's pretty obvious. Good throws up here, guys, because it's blurry now. Things aren't as clear, and things are never as clear as you think they are. And so if this red pen works, let's just recognise it, it's been shattered. But it's very important to recognise things aren't as easy to see. If you can go to the second last verse in our passage, verse 12, Paul says, for now, like in this life, we see only a reflection as in a mirror. As mature and close to God as you can ever get in life, because of the shadowing of shalom, you're only ever going to see things as a dim reflection in a mirror. You're not close face to face to God, and you don't see everything that clearly. And this is the probably most obvious, essential problem going on for the Corinthians, because they are looking to the wrong things to work out if they're okay. They're looking to the wrong stuff. We're going to go back to the first 3 verses here, but in Corinth had been established a few years before Paul wrote this letter, and it was a very important centre. It was like a cultural centre for a whole lot of, there was an urban centre, financial centre, artistic centre. So it attracted a lot of young, talented, ambitious people. And so it makes sense that a church in Corinth, very talented and brilliant and connected to excellence. And so in the first 3 verses, Paul actually describes what these people were actually like. He describes a church that's brilliant and talented. There's miracles, there's revelations. The church is growing. There's all sorts of great teaching and wisdom and knowledge in there. And he says you can have all that stuff and yet not know God. Back in chapter 8, verse 2 and 3, it says some people think they know what they don't know. And it says, but those who love know God. So in other words, if there's no love, he's saying there's no God. Let's read the first 3 verses here. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, if I don't have love, I'm a resounding gong. Yep. If I speak in that, right, so don't worry, I'm not going to keep, but that would be annoying, right? One element of his point, but there's a lot more to it. So he says, I'm like that if I don't have love. Verse 2, he says, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I have no love, I am nothing. And he says, if I give all I possess to the poor and give my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. It's very significant. These guys, their perspective, their vision is very blurred. I bought a white Falcon. Many of you might know it's one of the Falcons I owned a number of years ago from somewhere in Minchinbury. And I left the car yard. It had about between a quarter and half a tank of fuel. Peak hour, going down the freeway to go, I thought, I'll be right, I'll get home easy. And it just conks out halfway on the freeway. This is my experience just about every time I buy a car. Pretty much. I just make sure my phone is charged. So I ring the place and say, listen, is there any reason why you reckon this would be stopped? And they get to the guy who sold it and said, oh yeah, if it says about 80 Ks left in the tank, means it's empty. Good to know. So I was hours waiting for someone to get me petrol to get somewhere to get home. But the fact is, the sensor in the fuel gauge or the dial was faulty. So here's the thing with these people. If you look to gifts, talents and abilities to work out if you're okay, you are looking at a dial that is faulty. And it is not connected to what's under the hood of the car. It's broken. That's what's happening to these guys. Look at the things that he brings up. In the first verse he says, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, ecstatic spiritual experiences. That is popular stuff nowadays. They were keen on all that sort of stuff. If you don't have love, he's saying God's not in it. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, it's like, I guess, an ability to teach in great depth, I guess. Then he mentions faith that can move mountains. This is not this type of faith. This is like visionary faith, like a leadership gift, like faith that inspires people. And then in verse 3, he gives a virtue list. You know, people that are taking on voluntary poverty for very selfless sacrificial acts. Pretty powerful things. But what Paul is saying, you may possess all the range and capacity of miraculous gifts from God, but if you do not care from your heart to other people, you're nothing. You've missed the point. And maybe something worth considering. We live in a great city, Sydney and Campbelltown, where there are a lot of gifted, talented people. And we like consuming their talent. And in many spheres, we're very happy to just ignore issues of character because we like to get and consume more of their talent. That might be okay in society, but I wonder how much that seeps into the way we do stuff in the church. Just an open question. Jesus gave Judas ability to heal and help other people, even though he hadn't given his heart to God. God's so generous to people that he might influence. He'll do that sort of stuff. Now, this church had a lot of legitimate issues to deal with, to dispute, if you like, to wrestle with, okay? Paul didn't have a problem with that. He discusses big issues with them in this letter, but he had a massive problem with the way they treated each other. Their community was characterised by fighting and disputes, pride, coldness, rudeness. Can you believe it? Christians, often when they disagree, get really rude. Did you know that happens? Anyway, you might be aware of that, but apparently that happens. Sorry, sarcasm. Also, in the chapter just before, he said God creates unity through difference, through diversity. Creating people different, you can serve people better. But they were hopping into factions, people they want to hang around the same, and then powering up over the people. And so he's calling them out on this stuff. And so the very first line he says, I'm going to show you the most excellent way, a better way. But I just have an open question. How can you be involved in such compelling experiences, influence so many people with genuine gifts connected to God, and not know God? How can that happen? Verse 1 about the symbols is going to help us, because verse 1 says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but don't have love, I'm only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. What you've also got to know is that this place, Corinth, was also a religious centre. There are a whole lot of pagan temples where they worship other deities, and part of their worship were processions that weren't just inside their temples. They'd come out, and they in particular use gongs and clanging cymbals. The point of them were to get the attention of the deities. Say, look at us, look at how much we venerate you. Look how good I am, right? That's not about honouring any deity. It's about gaining stuff for them. And if that's what your gifts and talents and abilities are all used for, then that's why you're in the same boat. It's actually not about God at all. It's actually all about you gaining respect for you. Also, just notice, Paul loves gifts and people using their gifts for the sake of others. So straight after this and before this, he's saying, pursue the spiritual gifts. Pursue all these great things that you can do to help other people. So he's not against them. He doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, if that makes sense. He doesn't throw the baby of gifts out with the bathwater of boasting. But what he's wanting you to see is to not mistake talent for character. To not mistake talent, gifts, abilities for God's love in the heart. You should take this as a very serious challenge. I remember a person like David Koresh, Waco, Texas dude, responsible for the death of many people as a cult leader. He said stuff like this. He said, look, the apostles of old, they were filled with the Spirit and they brought people back from the dead. They healed people. If you can't do that, are you really a Christian? He'd say stuff just like that. He's mixed up power with love. It's an important warning because there's so many of you here right now, you serve in a whole bunch of ways in this community. We've got the music, sound team, people here involved in brigades, in youth group, in small group ministries during the week. A lot of you are involved in mission teams and camp work, in the food distribution ministry and stuff on midweek groups. Like, you do a lot of ministry here. Because I don't care how good you are. I don't care how many people you affect. Maybe one of the things you've got to know, God does not value skill of the head and the hand over his love in the heart. So the second thing we see through the first 3 verses is not just that love precedes, love is more important. than faith and hope. Now we're going to move to the next one straight away. My favourite one, love creates. It doesn't just precede. It's not just more important than other things. It creates. Now, I don't know what you think Paul's doing in the most famous passage here, the most poetic part. We're going to read the bit you hear if you go to a wedding, okay? What do you think he's doing with this passage? What's he trying to say? Just think about it yourself. He says here, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonour others. It's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Perfect for a wedding. Nothing wrong with hearing about that at a wedding. But what's he trying to do? See, the most common way this is taught is that you don't just have to be good, you need to be loving. If you want to be loving, here are all the bits. You need to be patient. You need to be kind. You need not to envy or boast. You need to not keep a record of wrongs. These are all the bits you have to do if you want to be loving. That's what people mostly do when they teach this. I don't think he's doing that with this. In fact, it doesn't make sense in the way it's been written. I want you to notice, he doesn't actually say anywhere here that love consists of patience. He doesn't say anywhere here, if you want to be loving, you need to go and do this and this and this. In other passages, he says things to do, but here it's different. Because the thing he's done here, he has personified love. Have a look in verse 7. You can see it more than anywhere else. It's clear as day. Love is an actor. Love is doing things only a person can do. It's not abstract. Verse 7, love always protects, love always trusts, love always hopes, love always perseveres. Love never fails. That's love doing stuff. He's personified love. He's depicted love as a person because this is the only way love ever comes into your life, through a person. Nobody learns to love by trying, but by the other people who've come and shown love and kindness to them. Before you love, well, before loving is ever something you do, it's someone you meet. Just stop and think for a minute about the things people change about you because of their love. Just have a think about this. What other people do. What about the first two? The headers here, love is patient, love is kind. Just stop and think, someone who's ever shown you kindness and patience. If someone's shown you patience, the Greek word is makrothumia. It means taking a lot of heat for a long time. Think about it like this. So if you are like being really nasty to be with, love will take the heat of that. They're not going to bail. They're going to stay with you to work it out. Kindness, if someone shows you kindness, this will help you understanding that love doesn't just take your garbage and keep putting up with it. Love finds a way to care for you. You might just need a big hug. Love's very proactive here, right? But if someone has shown you patience or kindness, it starts to change who you are. It starts to create new possibilities that weren't there before. And it doesn't just change the way you relate to others, it actually changes the way you relate to yourself. The next two are more internal. He says, love doesn't envy and it doesn't boast. See, if I'm not envying, it means I'm not resenting you for having something I want. And if I don't boast, I don't think I'm better than you because I've got something I know you want. That sort of difference starts to happen when I've started to experience some patience and kindness from someone else. It literally changes you. Now, you can go through this passage. Some great commentators have rightly put Christ in here because he's personified love. You can put your own name, Martin's patient, Martin's kind. Yeah, is he? And you can just reflect. You can also put someone, like, look, Grandma is patient, Uncle Phil is kind, like whoever they are. And you might find some people in your life who are these attributes. But I'm afraid when you hit verse 7, there's no one here who's these attributes. Because look at verse 7. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. I'm afraid there is no one here who always gets that right. There's nobody who always perseveres, always trusts, always gets it right. That's because Paul is not trying to confront us with just the power of love, but he's trying to confront us with the perfect lover. Let's think about what love creates. And I maybe want, if I find a pen that works, I want to write some words around here. I think there's some other reasons why we struggle to trust, why we sometimes struggle to see the possibilities or to love. Maybe you'll identify with this, and this helps you start to think about how God's love to us makes it possible for you to love in different ways. If you've experienced this egg everywhere, it's messy. If you've experienced betrayal, makes it hard to trust. Or powerlessness, that'll make it hard to trust. Shame, that'll make it hard to love. Some of you experienced pretty big betrayals in your life. Maybe early in life you started to conclude there's no one here for you. Maybe some care that was intended for you had been taken away from you. And you concluded, well, this place isn't safe. And so, therefore, I'm just going to take care of myself. And basically, you do life in fight mode. Makes it pretty hard to trust people, let alone God. Maybe powerlessness is something you can relate to. This might happen to you if you've experienced a lot of rejection in your life. But maybe there can be a sense of overwhelming sense of, I just don't seem to be able to get out of this hole. I can't change the way things are happening. Maybe I'm just different. I'm weird. I don't fit. Maybe it's because I'm too dramatic, or I see too much, or I say too much. Maybe I say too much of the truth, but it seems to be people look at me and go, well, maybe I'm not welcome on their table. It affects the way I do life. It definitely affects the way I am able or not able to hope. Shame's a big one. Shame undermines our ability to love big time. A lot of you have known a lot of love and goodness in your life, but you've also known death, where you've lost people you love. That's really hard. That can leave you in a bind, where you can actually feel so ashamed that you gave your heart so completely to someone or something and then experience the loss of it. Makes you ask a question, should I just stay cut off, or could I ever love again? You sort of often live frozen in isolation. I think you can recognise with me, those are pretty honest pictures of what we experience as human beings. The egg, it sort of helps us make sense of the eggs here, Shalom has been shattered. Now, this is the thing Paul's trying to get. He's trying to confront you not just with the power of love, but the perfect lover. He wants you to know that Jesus enters your story to experience the fullness of every trauma. Stop and think about the betrayal. The night before he's arrested, his 3 best mates couldn't do one all-nighter with him. And then when he's arrested, they all run away, and his most vocal follower calls down curses from heaven against him, denies ever knowing him. And then on the cross, in the darkness, he's saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Talk about a betrayal. Talk about powerless. Just imagine if you really are equal with God, yet you chose to come as a servant, humble, willing to be obedient, even death on a cross. Imagine the powerlessness when you could call a legion of angels to get off that cross, but you stay. Came to your own and they rejected you. Crucify you outside of the city. And shame is massive. If you go read Matthew, Mark, Luke and John's account of the death of Jesus, it's not just they're trying to kill him, it's them shaming and mocking and violating his dignity, his kingship, everything. See, the scriptures say that Jesus did not just pay the penalty for the wrongs we've done, that he bore our shame and our sorrow. And this is what opens the door for you and I to be able to say nothing without love because of his love. This is what opens the door to change. To the degree that we will allow the love of Jesus in, opens the door for us to be able to love in unexpected ways. The last thing I want to show you about love is that it surpasses faith and hope. And in a few different ways. One way it surpasses, it's very relevant to our culture. One bloke a number of years ago has described Western culture as like an airport departure lounge. You know, airport departure lounges, I just stop and think of it. They're just like everyone sits in rows, no one talks. Everything's mediated by a screen. Screens tell you what to do, where to go. In other words, it's disconnected. And actually, they're not indigenous. They're not particular to anywhere. You could just go anywhere in the world, be dropped off blindfolded, and then find it really hard to work out where you are because every airport departure lounge looks the same. I wonder how much that instinct seeps into the way we do the Christian life. Disconnected. Because we can bang on about nothing without love, but look more like an airport departure lounge. I think this matters heaps. In light of that, think about how love actually blows the banks of what's expected. See, you put your faith in something reliable. You put your hope in something you can count on. When it comes to love, it's something unreliable. Think about what Jesus said. He said, you've heard it said, love your neighbour, hate your enemy. And then he says, but I say to you in Matthew 5, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you. That's putting love on something very unreliable, wouldn't you say? This is why love surpasses these two, because you only ever put these two on something you can count on, but love surpasses them because you freely give it past what's expected. Why? Because while you were ungodly, Christ dies for you. You know, I don't know how kind I'd be to you. These words ring in my head. I don't know how kind I'd be to you if you were un-Martinly. Right? You were anti-Martin. You were very opposed to Martin. I don't know how kind I'd want to be. Because you're ungodly, you're opposed to God, you're anti-God, yet he still does all this for you. He dies for you. So that's what means... that's why we have to be willing to say as a church, whatever we do, it's going to be nothing done without love. But it's that sort of love. So what that means is if you don't love Anthony Albanese or Susan Ley or the leaders in the Senate like Penny Wong or Michaela Cash or Trump or anyone else in political life or anyone else in your neighbourhood, street or family who is you consider hard to get on with, there is something wrong. If you can't pray for those people, for their well-being, There's something going wrong here. Because that's the type of love we're talking about. We're not just talking about something that's just like a warm blanket. It's actually very exciting because it changes the possibilities of the future for other people. Some people like to think love also surpasses these because it just keeps going on. It's foundational, it precedes, and it does keep going on in a stronger way than faith and hope. You know, he says here in verse 8 that some things are going to stop, and you should be aware of this. He says, prophecies will cease, tongues will be stilled, knowledge will pass away. One day you're not going to have to listen to anyone teach you because you're going to be face to face with God, right? And so basically your role in life as a follower of Christ is just like a pastor at a wedding, right? You help the wedding, the ceremony happens, then you put the mic down. There's nothing else for you to do. Basically, as a Christian, you're telling people the reception's coming, the reception's coming, reception's coming. And when it comes, you're there. That's the Christian life. And then all our, I guess, ways of trying to connect with God, now praying to a God you can't see, you can put those aside because you see him face to face. Some people like to say that so in heaven there won't be faith or hope. But I don't know if that's actually fully true. There's faith and hope in Shalom. And I'm definitely, in eternity future, I'm going to be trusting what God has for us. And I am going to be hopeful for the eternal future he has for us, even when I'm with him. But there are some parts of faith I don't need anymore because I can see him. There are some parts of hope that have been realised fully, but there's an eternity to live with God. And I go open-handed, trusting him. So there's going to be a sense of faith and hope still there. And notice, Paul doesn't actually say faith and hope stop. He says these three remain, but love's the greatest of them. So I hope I've convinced you something of how important love is. I just have like a couple of questions. As a church, if these are our values, here's some questions that may be worth us asking. Where might we be prioritising efficiency, image or comfort over self-giving love and genuine care? Do our words, tone and actions consistently reflect the healing and restorative love of God? What steps could we take to cultivate a culture where love leads, even when it's costly and challenging? They're pretty good questions. Kathleen Smith writes a great article asking the questions, and I want to leave you with this. If we're going to say nothing without love, let me ask you one thing about your relationships. Are your relationships just another to-do list? You know, there's another thing you've got to do. I guess I'll ask you the question, what if your relationship weren't a to-do list, but a scavenger hunt for you to grow up a bit? Maybe instead of thinking, oh yes, I need to message and catch up on how Lindsay's going or how Ruben's going, you know, like a to-do list. Maybe I need to ask different questions. Maybe, who could answer a question I have about the history of my family? Who's been having a tough time? Who's going to stir some reactivity in me that gives me a good workout? Who am I not telling about something important in my life? Who have I been mind reading a lot where it would be useful to hear what they actually think? Who is the hardest person to be curious about? And how much contact would it take for me to start being curious? These three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, because it precedes, it's more important, it creates, and it surpasses pretty much everything. I hope that's been challenging and encouraging. I'm going to pray, and our musos are going to come and lead us after that. Father God, thank you for tonight, and we just ask that you continue while we sing and then while we hang out, continue to speak to our hearts about the significance of responding to your love. Amen.